session today here on the low fade. We're going to be doing a low fade demonstration here on our, what do we got here? Ian mannequin. So again, we're going to use, if anyone happened to see any of the previous sessions that we've used in the past, we did a razor cut here on Ian, and now we're going to be doing just half of his head for the session today, demonstrating this low fade technique. And we're going to do that. That way, hopefully we can catch some pretty good lighting while we have it here in my room. And we're going to work with just a couple of techniques. What I'm going to be doing is more of a fading upward technique. So we're actually going to start at our lowest lengths here on Ian and progressively work our way up. I am going to be going pretty short and exposing some skin on him. So we're going to be using both a trimmer and a clipper in order to accomplish this. And I'll show you exactly which tools I'll be using in just a moment. But for his low fade that we're going to do, we're going to bring him, he's going to be pretty close to the camera, so that way you can see most of what's happening on his head. But we are going to be doing a diagonal back fade. So this way it's going to be shorter in the temple, shorter in the nape. We're actually going to end up keeping a bit of weight around the ear. So this is not going to be, again, very high. It's going to stay really low through that perimeter kind of area. But again, as we go through this, I'm going to break down each of the different techniques that we use, talk about the different tools as I switch between them. But before I get started in this workshop, in case you wanted to practice at home and be ready to follow along with this one, whether you're watching it now or, again, many people watch these videos after they've already been recorded, I want to give you a quick rundown of what I'm going to be using today for my tools. Starting out with my comb. I am going to be using a white clipper comb here. And the reason why I'm using a white clipper comb, nice wide teeth, it has the handle for control, but I'm going to be using that so that way as we actually work into his hair, it's going to give me that nice contrast. Working with a dark comb, if I were to grab one of those for my kit here, just for a quick moment, the moment I put a dark comb into his hair, we kind of lose it. Right? You don't always see that. It catches some of that shine and reflection, but that's not something I actually really see here in the room. So the moment that dark comb goes in the hair, I kind of lose it. Where with a white or any type of color that would contrast the dark hair, this is going to work really well. If I was doing a low fade or anything like that on someone with blonde hair or lighter color hair, of course, a dark comb would work well. But always think of the contrast, what you're working on. Light color, go with something dark. Dark color, go with something light. So that's what I'm going to be using throughout this fade. I'm also going to be working with my Magic Clipper. This is pretty much just a standard wall clipper. You, of course, could use something that you're comfortable with, whether it be Babyliss or Andis or whatever it may be. But I'm using it just for the benefit that this is my cordless clipper. And I like this one, but this will allow me to just work a little bit more freely in this room since we're going to be doing this, again, on camera, pretty close. I don't want too much to get in the way. But, of course, what I'm looking for on a clipper while doing this fade is I want something that has an adjustable height to that blade and to that guard that's on there. So with that lever, I'm able to open and close this, which allows that clipper guard to open and close with that. So that way we can really adjust our lengths and get a smooth finish to that fade. With that, I also have a number of different attachments that I will be working with. And just to kind of go through a few of these there, I've got different colored, black, gray, white. You might have red or blue or multicolored attachments. It's okay, whatever the color is. Of course, you want them to match your clipper. But what I have here from my shortest all the way to my longest, this is what would be considered your half guard attachment. All right, so this one here is what we're going to use. This is 1/16 in length. I also have my number 1 attachment, or a 1/8 length. I'm also going to be using, when we switch over to this white attachment, this is going to be my 1.5 attachment. This here is 3/16 in length. From there, we also have a number 2 attachment. This one here is a 1/4 inch in length. And then I also have just a number 3 attachment just to help me with any refining and blending, connecting to the interior. We are not going to be cutting the interior of Ian much shorter. We're just going to be blending and connecting right into it. So this is going to be that length I'm going to use to help kind of continue that blend, but you'll also see me using both either the 2 or the 3 as an overcomb technique. So again, we're going to be starting with those shortest lengths, working our way up. Now I am actually going to cut shorter than this half guard, all right, or that 1/16. In order to do that, I'm just going to lay these back out so they're easy for me to grab right off to the side on my little shelf here. I am also going to be use a trimmer, as I mentioned. All right, now here I just have an Andis trimmer. This may look a little bit different than yours at home. I have removed a part of this case, and that may or may not be permitted in the area where you work. So again, always double check your regulations, but I have customized my case and I removed the top portion of this Andis trimmer. So in case you're wondering, well, that doesn't quite look like mine, it's because I have done some custom work to it, but allowed me to kind of open up this case so I can see my trimmer work a little bit more freely as we come in and work this. This is what I'm going to be starting with for our lowest length of the fade. This is what's going to really set that nice perimeter length, and we're going to build off of that. So again, those are the two tools: trimmer, clipper, along with a variety of attachments. And then we've got that cutting comb as well in that contrasting color. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started right into this low fade. And again, if you've got questions, I do have a chat up over on my monitor. So I'm happy to answer any questions, whether it be about the tools or the techniques that you may have. We're just going to walk through this together. And again, we're going to start with our trimmer. Now, you can, of course, work with any trimmer that you yourself are comfortable with. It doesn't have to be an Andis. It doesn't have to be a Wahl. I do like a trimmer. This time I am going with something corded just because I want to be able to get in there and cut the length, and really making sure that it stays well oiled in between your different cuts. I do have off to the side here just a can of a lubricating spray. So this will help both keep my blades cool while I'm working, and then also help keep them smooth so they glide pretty well. So I'm actually just going to go ahead and turn my trimmers on, and I'm going to just give them a little spray just to make sure that they're nice and lubricated. Give them a little shake off for a moment. And what we're going to do before I even get started with this is just show you exactly the line I'm going to get started. So here, I'm going to just brush this through. He's a little styled, right? He's got some product in his hair. Many gentlemen may come into your salon or barbershop environment and may have their hair already styled, looking to get freshened up, maybe looking to get cut. They may not all come in taking a hat off and have loose hair. You may choose to shampoo before, after, both. Since this is a mannequin, there's no scalp oils, there's no debris, anything like that. So I'm just going to jump right in. And like I said, we're going to be working this low fade to actually connect to these lengths that are up on top. So just to kind of give you an idea, I'm going to pull him back for a moment. With that kind of haircut that he has, I'd say a pretty common male style, just a little messy on top. He's got a lot of length to the sides, and we're going to fade that out. Let me go ahead and get him back in position where you will be able to see the sides fairly well, and I'll be able to come in and cut them. What we're going to do is work on this diagonal back, and I'm going to use not necessarily just the top of the ear, but I'm actually going to look at that hairline inside of here, and I can see the hairline is above the ear just a bit, and I'm going to work this diagonal back. And what I really want to make sure is I'm staying below that major temple area. So here I can see where that temple point is. I'm going to stay there, go right off of that kind of hairline and work that on that diagonal back. So this is going to wrap from basically this temple point that the mannequin has, just like many gentlemen will also have, and working that on a diagonal back that goes over the top of the ear, and then we'll connect down to the occipital bone, just underneath it. Now you can set this a bit lower. You don't want to go much higher, because if I start going at or above that temple point, technically, I'm going to be more of a medium or a high fade. So we want to stay below that temple point. Well, let's go ahead and get started. And again, I just want to point out that since we're going to be going kind of right over that ear area here and working to that temple point, I'm actually going to come in and just set that diagonal back line. And this really is going to be quite visual. Just tapping this in with those. And again, this is going to go right down to about that occipital bone. Now, I could drop this and have this even be a bit more severe, but I'm going to go with a pretty standard diagonal line, nothing too steep, nothing too high. Once we have that line set in, we're going to go ahead and just right above where that beard would start, going to use that trimmer and just go right up against it. Now, I'm not going to go all the way to the line. Right? I'm going to just start to rock out a little bit near that line. And same thing, I'm going to start down at the hairline, and I'm going to slowly start to work this trimmer up. Now, because this is a trimmer, I don't want to force this too much. Trimmers aren't necessarily designed to remove a lot of hair at one time. So I don't want to come in like a clipper and just really force my way through it. I really want, I'm just doing a little bit of kind of like a back and forth rocking motion. That way the trimmers can easily work their way through that hair. And I find that this specific trimmer I'm using really does a good job at that. And again, I'm only going to work to about the halfway point. That way we can leave a little bit of a reference of where we started and then what we're going to. Probably also use that other side of the head for one of our future live sessions and do maybe a bit of a different fade on that one. So I'm just going to go over this a couple of times. Now, if I really wanted to come in and detail this out, we'll see, depending on if we've got time today, I would maybe even get out my shaver and really blend that hairline out into that skin, giving this a really great finish to that fade. The other challenge that I like with our Ian mannequin here is that not only am I just going to be fading upward, but I do also have to blend out that beard. I'm not going to be just leaving that as is. So now that we have this first area of our fade, really this kind of zone one considered, I want to show you something of how we're going to be really planning out this fade. So now that we have this diagonal back motion done, what I'm going to do is just, I want to rest my head right at that top of the ear. And I'm just going to go ahead and just picture these four fingers as four different zones. And that's how we're going to work through this. So my first zone here was this trimmer length, right? That's kind of right at that line and below. That was all done in that trimmer length. What I then want to picture is the size of my finger here is going to be my zone 2. So we're fading upward. Zone 2, I'm actually going to just step up in one length. So this is my lowest trimmer. My next length that I'm going to use in this zone here is going to be my number 1. Then in my middle finger, which is zone 3, this is going to be my number 2. And then here in zone 4, which is my index finger, this is going to be that very top zone, which should be that kind of 4th zone, which will be that 3/ blending into the 4th. I see someone asking here, can I make yourself the spotlight view? I think I should be the spotlight here already. I am. So hopefully you may have to just check on your device to make sure that you are actually viewing it in the presenter mode. I am spotlighted, so it should be good to go. Awesome. I see you got it. So fantastic. So again, working this trimmer, then zone 2 is going to be our number 1 attachment. Zone 3 is going to be my number 2 attachment. And zone 4 is going to be our number 3 attachment, blending out into that interior length. So that's going to be what we're working through. Lowest part of our fade is really concentrated taking place down here. Now, I could also condense this. I could make that quite a bit tighter if I wanted to really emphasize that top length. It doesn't always have to be the full kind of size of a finger. You know, this is just an average. It allows me to eyeball it, but you can condense those zones. So that way the fade happens in a much tighter, more concentrated area. You can even spread those zones out. So that way your fade really takes place over a larger area and even could be a little bit smoother. The more that you condense it, the more noticeable weight that you would see in your fades. So there's a lot of options when we talk about fading. But again, I would say this here is a pretty standard approach to it. So again, have that trimmer work done. Now, rule of thumb, we work with this. We're going to put on an attachment. Every time we put on an attachment, we're actually going to go ahead and open up our trimmer, or sorry, our clipper on. So we switched. Every time we put on an attachment, we are going to open up. And what that does is help us that when we start working through this zone, right? Again, I'm working our zone 2. That's going to be the area where I'm working, concentrating my clipper work here. We are always going to start with it open, which allows me to begin the blending process into the next zone. Let me again show you what that's going to look like. And this motion, it's going to be pretty quick. I'm not coming through and doing these large sweeping strokes, right? Since we're really fading this out, most of this C stroke or this kind of arcing technique to blend it out is going to be happening really down here to just finger work or maybe using my wrist at the most. We can't use our elbows and our shoulders to really sweep along the head because we would just blast through those zones and then we would end up taking that fade much higher, or what we also sometimes call chasing a fade. So again, really making sure we stay concentrated on our work. Attachments on. Yet again, this is a number 1 or a 1/8 inch length. We have our attachment open. We're going to go ahead and turn that on, and we are going to start clippering right through that zone. And we are going to, again, really what I'm visualizing here, unlike in many other haircuts, we're working with a longer length, female style lengths, longer men's length. You actually can part off, section off different parts of the head. But in clipper work, everything's really more visual. So I'm constantly picturing what is the size of that zone, right? And picture that empty spot right there. That is my zone. It works on a diagonal back. That's what I'm picturing. And then I myself am in a position at the diagonal back and just start to take my clipper work up and out through there. Again, use that comb. And I'm going to just take this right through the back. And again, notice how that clipper arcing motion is really just happening using my fingers. The way that I'm holding my clipper here allows me to just twist that thumb, kind of bend that back, and that creates that arcing motion that I'm looking for to start that blend. What that will do is make sure that I don't end up with a hard line this zone. The only line that I know I'm going to have to work at is this one right here between that trimmer length and our number 1. And that's okay. We're going to be using and even dropping down to removing no attachments on our clipper. So again, just taking a look at this. I'm just going to move this hair up and out of the way for just a moment. Starting to like where that is going. So now that I've blended this out kind of up into that next zone, I'm already getting the work started. Now we're going to go ahead and close that attachment and that clipper. And now I'm going to start to work through that zone again, blending it up into the work I just did. So notice how there's always that C stroke that's taking place. And when I start working this, what I really want to point out, I'm just going to turn that off, is if you notice on the clipper, there's kind of 2 flat parts. There's this heel of a clipper, and then there's the teeth, right? So if I go ahead and actually place my comb flat where the teeth are, notice how that actually works at a diagonal. If I place my comb to the heel, right, that would be on a vertical, diagonal, vertical, diagonal, vertical. I want to position my clipper so that the teeth are the flat part going against the head. Don't come in with your heel to the head. Because if you can see just a little bit of that example, if I put my heel to the skin, notice how the teeth are already quite a distance away from the scalp. We want to make sure we're going in with the teeth flush to the skin. Now, don't make the mistake and also go in pointy side of the teeth, because now all you're going to do is just scratch your guest up. So you want to make sure you understand the flat part of where that kind of comb portion of the attachment, that is going to go flush to the skin, not the heel, not the point. And that's going to help you. So again, I'm going to use that part. I'm just going around the ear using just the edge of the teeth. Again, making sure that my clipper is positioned in a diagonal back fashion, following that parting length all the way around. Again, notice how I'm constantly doing that arcing motion. That arcing motion is what's going to help set me up to really always refine that blend. Once I feel that I've gotten that accomplished, I'm going to actually go ahead and swap my attachments. And we are going to step up to that next attachment for our next. So yet again, let's visualize this. Trimmer length. We've now done our attachment, or again, 1/8 of an inch. Here we're going to that number 2, this 3. So I'm now working in the number 2 attachment. All right. So with that, again, New attachments on. What do I do the moment that I put an attachment on my clipper? Let me know in the chat what I would do automatically. I'm going to give you a little hint. Let me know in the chat. What did I just do the moment I put that attachment on? And I'm going to just comb this hair back into position. And I'm going to start working yet again in that third zone is where I'm at. Same thing, flush with the comb portion. And I'm just going to start scooping this up and out, working just in that third zone. Notice how I'm not traveling all the way up to the ceiling, just going to where that third zone is. And this first pass, what it's doing is blending me up into that next zone. If you have, not looking at the chat right now, but if you happen to put it in there, if you're thinking what I did the moment I put that attachment on is I opened up that clipper. And that's already helping me prep the blend for that next zone. So again, just working right through that zone on that diagonal back fashion. Once we have that blend work already done, and just getting that hair back into place, we are going to close our clipper and now blend that zone 2 into zone 3. All right? So again, recap. Zone 2 was our number 1. Zone 3 is our number 2. So now that I've closed it, that's going to help me blend into that previously opened number 1. So I'm just working through there. Really what I'm doing is I'm listening. I'm listening more than I'm going to see anything here. And I like to think this. I once had a coworker here who made an analogy to vacuuming. Now, how do you know when your carpet's really clean? You know, you can see vacuum lines, but do you know that it's clean? Most of us, when we vacuum, we're listening as the vacuum passes over our carpet. If you keep hearing that click sound when it's sucking anything up, you know that you have to keep doing passes over it. And that's what I'm listening for here. I'm listening to that sharp little hair cutting sound. And if I hear that, I know I need to keep making my passes. I'm not hearing it so much now. That tells me that's doing pretty good. And taking a look at my fade going on here, I'm pretty happy with where my blend's at. I still have some weight up I need to remove. But right through this area where we've got a pretty good view, it's a smooth looking fade. I do still have, of course, that line I'm going to be fading out. We'll be tackling that at the end. Now that I finished zone 3, we're now going to move into zone 4. Again, just to recap. 1, trimmer. Zone 2 was a number 1. Zone 3 was a number 2. Zone 4, all right, I was actually this way here. Zone 4, this is going to be a number 3 attachment or a 3/8 length. Now, I'm going to continue with that same pattern. That what I'm doing is the moment the attachment goes on, we are opening that clipper and we are going to go ahead and just work on blending that out into that interior length. And at the length that his interior is, continuing on, I'll definitely have to come in and probably do a little clipper over comb. And I could do that now, right? I can leave this open. I can close it. And I even like to use, with that attachment on, I like to go ahead and just do a bit of that clipper over comb work with that attachment on. If I ever were accidentally to miss my comb while doing this clipper over comb work, I know that I'm not going to end up taking anything shorter than I want to, because this is the longest attachment length that I need. So when I come in here and I work that clipper over comb, just working that on that slight diagonal, passing that clipper over horizontally, that's going to allow me to maintain the length. I'm not going to end up going shorter than I want to with my fade. Whereas if I were to, let's say, remove this attachment and do this type of more of almost like a freehand clipper over comb, if I miss my comb at all or push my comb in too close to the head, this has no protection. This could end up putting in that notch or that hole or carving out a chunk of your fade. So you know your longest attachment, you can leave this on, you can close it or leave it open depending on the amount of safety you want, and you can perform your clipper over comb technique with that attachment on. It might take you, a moment to get comfortable doing that if you've never done clipper over comb with an attachment, but that will help you maintain and protect your length. Now, again, once we've done all of our more blending work, we want to make sure we close this attachment and blend into the previous zone. So remember we had the open 2, that is designed to help us blend into this closed 3. The open 3 helps us blend into the interior. So that's what all that work is doing here. So with that work, that's really the good majority of my fade work done, blending upward here. What we're going to do is come on back in, and we are going to target that line we need to blend out here. Really take a look at that. Now, again, the shortest length that we have, this very transparent, very visible skin, this we're going to work blending here into that number 1. So what's a great place to start with that? Well, in between that skin and that number 1 would be our half attachment. So we can use this. Yet again, this is a 1/16 in length. Yet again, the same rule applies. The moment that I put an attachment on, we are going to go ahead and open that clipper. And I'm just going to turn him a little bit just so I can see that from my perspective. I'll just try to step around this camera a bit. I want you guys to be able to see as much of that as you can. Get that to lock in. There we go. So again, this is a half or 16th attachment. My clipper is open, everything into place, and we're going to turn that on. And now we're going to do very small strokes. Remember, we're not trying to recut that entire zone. All we're doing is trying to blend this up and in. So here, no longer with, it's definitely the smallest little C strokes using just our fingers. Now, again, I do plan on seeing weight kept over the ear. That's just the way that this fade does go. So don't, some people want to come in and they're like, oh, well, the fade, it's following the hairline here. Yeah, absolutely. It's going to go right along that hairline. And just start to slowly work that in. Now, once I've worked that open 1/16, or again, what may be called a half attachment or half guard, depending on which way you like to go. Sometimes I use them interchangeably. We're going to just slowly start to close it. I'm not going to close it all the way. We're going to go from open to maybe about 3/4. And again, start to blend that down. Really just taking these nice small steps and working that. I'm going to focus on the back here. That way I don't have to reach too much that sideburn temple area. We'll come back around. After I cut a bit, I'm going to close this some more and keep working that. Very small strokes to help that blend. Really all done just with the fingers. And then as I work my way down to just fully closed, and really this fade, but I'm also really listening to that hair. Do I hear that length coming off? You kind of hear this little kind of crispity, maybe crunchity sound. And I'm really listening for that hair to come up and off that head. And the other important thing, especially when fading, is to even make sure that sometimes you just take a moment to step back. When you're on top of a line, you may feel like you always see that line. And you may need to just step back from your work, look away, look at your fade through a mirror. Now, I don't have a mirror here. So I'm really going to take a look, and I wouldn't maybe look at my monitor, but I'm going to be honest that, the cameras that we use, the monitor that we use here, it may not always pick up all the details. So where my camera is limited in the amount of shading and highlights that it will show here, the contours and contrast, I'm going to trust my eye more than I am going to trust that camera. It does still look like there's actually a really heavy line here, but in person, that is not actually that heavy. There's still some weight I could remove, but I want to trust my eye more than I'm going to trust that camera. And I'm going to go ahead and repeat the same techniques here, blending that out in that temple area. Again, start to close it a little at a time. And once I've worked through the length with this half attachment, or again, 1/16 inch in length, I could then, if I still feel like I need to get even closer and tighter, I can go ahead and remove that attachment. But yet again, I always want to encourage you, anytime that you're going to start with a change in attachment, you want to open this up. Now, I am going to go ahead and just give you a quick word of caution here. We have been cutting this entire time with one clipper. More often than not, in a spa, salon, shop, whatever environment you're working in, I would not use this same clipper to come in and finish out this skin fade. The biggest reason being that this metal guard of the clipper is now pretty hot. And if I leave that pressed to the head, it really can feel almost like I'm putting a hot iron to his skin. So if I were typically to come all the way back through this and do any skin work, I would switch to a second clipper. And that's why you'll see so many barbers especially. They have 3, 4 more clippers because each one is set to a different length for a different technique. Is it a blending blade that they're using? Is it primarily for skin work? Because that second clipper I have sitting off to the side, that is going to be cool. So when I come and put it on the skin, it actually might feel more refreshing. This same clipper, if I were doing, again, a real person, I would not use this just because the heat that's built up. And that's a big reason why if you're going to fade upward, that works really well if you maybe only have a single clipper, because as you work your way out, you're not working with the heat. But if you've got to come back to it, that second clipper is going to be a benefit. If you're fading downward, someone that prefers to fade downward, having 2 clippers is really recommended for that. So again, do keep that in mind that your mannequins, they may not flinch at any heat, but if you have not actually felt your clipper after it's been running for even maybe just, and this is where things like those lubricant sprays, those cooling sprays can really be a big benefit. They help remove some of that heat, but it's, that's not a cure all. Having that second clipper that that you're going to use only when you're coming in contact with the skin really is a big benefit. So again, I'm just going to continue to go through this. And again, like I said, I'm definitely going to trust my eye more than I'm going to trust what a camera might show me just because of the detail. But that's actually looking pretty smooth. And building out that weight here. That low fade really helps you kind of work off and emphasize that occipital bone area. You can see all the weight that's still maintained through here. And again, I'm starting open and I can progressively close this, really working small strokes as I'm blending from that 1 down to the half and then down all the way here to that skin. And this is, if someone were to come by and bump my arm, they would probably knock this clipper right out of my hand. I am barely holding it. This way I'm not also putting it, there's no pressure being put to his skin, right? Right there, I'm really balancing this clipper and I'm not putting any weight or pressure against his head. So I really want to be able to keep this to this lightest touch so that way I don't end up pushing in hard and yet again creating another line somewhere in this fade. So really trying to be mindful with that. Again, I'm just going to start to just position them, turn them a little bit differently. Again, it really helps to make sure that even in your salon or shop, whatever environment you may be working in, you try to use as many angles as you can to really see that cut. Look down at it, look up at it, try to get all different angles, but your best view is going to be eye level. When you're working with fades, if you have a tendency to have the head much lower than you and you're always cutting downward, you're going to see more weight and it's going to look like there's more of a line. I mean, again, I'll just even try to position him. If we go ahead and give him a turn sideways, try to just bring him up just a little bit. But you can see the view looking down at it, definitely more weight that's visible. If we really bring him up a bit higher, right, and what I'll even do is I'm just going to angle his head, and then I'm going to just point the camera more looking into it. It's going to look a bit softer because now you're looking up into the hair, so it's going to seem more transparent. Your best representation of how your fade is doing is going to be at eye level. And this camera is a little bit lower than where I actually am. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of give that a turn. And I could keep working this fade. You know, fades themselves, and this is sometimes why, you know, if you really nail it down, you can have fades done pretty quickly. But fading definitely has that attention to detail. And the more that you practice it, the better that you'll get. Now, I'm not going for speed here. I'm going just to kind of help demonstrate some of these different techniques that we have that you can use. I mean, and even when looking at this low fade, I don't even want you to think about the fact that, oh, you know, this low fade is done with a trimmer, then a 1, 2, 3 type of, you could start this with anything. Your lowest part of the fade, this could be a number 1 attachment. And then you can go up to a 2, 3, and a 4. You could start the lowest part of your fade with a number 2 or a 1/4 inch. You can adjust these lengths to whatever your guest might be looking for. What I really want you to understand is that working with this low fade, this diagonal back, this is the effect that you get. The idea behind this low fade and a diagonal back, while again, I'm going to try to just maybe sweep some of that half. Again, we haven't done half the head, but if you look at this from that profile view, you can see that this low fade emphasizes more fullness in the crown. This is a really great technique for gentlemen that might have, honestly, even a protruding occipital bone. This will kind of round out to it and not make that occipital bone seem like it sticks out so far. Or gentlemen that have a very flat head, by doing this type of a low fade diagonal back, it leaves them more length that they can create fullness and help round that head out a bit more. Many times with a fade, what I'm really looking to do, and this profile shot here shows it off pretty well, is I like looking for that kind of question mark profile that you can see here. That question mark profile really helps, I think, emphasize that curves of the head and that head shape, and not allow us to, you know, emphasize a flat head if that's what they have. We could look for that type of a profile. And again, that's, you know, not always the case on everybody. You know, I don't force that, but I know that I can have a really great emphasis to the head shape and a really great fade done if I get that transition. And then I also have that question mark profile. So with this, what I am going to now start to focus on, as I mentioned earlier, you know, we've not only do we have the fade, but we also have this beard, and I'm feeling pretty happy with that fade that I have going so far. Now I could also refine this with a little bit more shear over comb, some blending shears as well, just because mannequins do have a pretty good density that can help lighten that up a bit. But I'm happy. I don't see any heavy distinct lines. Anything that I do see, like I'm looking at my camera now, I can see it looks like there's some weight here, but notice how that light adjusts and shifts. This camera is not going to show the full detail of what I see here live and in person. And in person, it definitely is looking pretty good. What I am going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just fade out this beard. And what I'm going to do is actually work in reverse of what we've done. And here, I'm actually going to start with our longest length. If you remember, we did basically a trimmer, then we did a 1, 2, 3 going up. So I'm going to start with a 3, 2, 1 and go up into that temple now. So with this, I like to imitate the direction of our fade. So that way there is kind of this harmony going on between. We've got a diagonal back fade. I am going to work on a slight diagonal back in that beard area as well. So here. Now there's so much that you can do with beards depending on what that gentleman himself is open to and interested in. What you really also need to sometimes communicate and talk with your guests about is a beard, right? When you're talking about fading out a sideburn, the sideburn itself, think of even like those mutton chops types of sideburns, those go all the way down to the jawline here. So when they're talking about fading through, a sideburn, blending that out, you really want to talk with them, how much of the beard can you work into? You don't want to go too far into the cheek because then you might start to round and then the area sticks out further. So I'm really working off of that kind of corner of the jawline to that cheek area and really looking, again, trying to imitate that same direction of this fade. And if I go lower than that, well, then I'm going to start cutting this beard in. And, someone may like that, someone may not. But I'm starting out with that 3 open, taking off all of that bulk here. I can also turn this upside down and just make sure I blend that just right out, not pushing in at all. Notice how my teeth are going to point straight to the floor, and I'm just going to go straight down with that. If I push in, yet again, I'm going to cut into that beard. So we've done that 3 open. I'm going to go ahead and close it and just work that up a bit more. Now, again, going a step down from that 3, we had our 2. All right, I'm going to start with this open. Blend that through the 3, close it, and take that a little bit shorter. And then this is, you're not going to really notice this all that much. This is really going to be more about making sure the beard does have a continuous blend. We're then going to go ahead and drop down to our number 1. Again, our number 1 is a 1/8 inch length. Open it, and let's go ahead and start to take that down. Again, diagonal back pattern. Close it. And what you may not always be able to easily see what I'm doing on camera is as I work each attachment length, I am progressively working my way higher and higher. So if maybe you come back and watch this, you'll notice how my number 3, I started below the ear. The number 2, I was a little bit closer to the ear. This number 1, I'm now over the earlobe. And then when I go down to even blending this out using the 1/2, you'll see that I'm kind of over that ear, that little kind of conch area. So working with that, you may not have caught it and seen it easily as I worked through, but those attachments started low and came up high. Kind of like how our fade started low and worked up high. We're doing just the same thing in a reversed order. So now that we have those done, again, I am going to use that 1/2 inch, sorry, not 1/2 inch, that 1/2 attachment, which is a 1/16 of an inch, 1/2 attachment, right? Nice and thin looking. Open it up. And again, let's blend out that sideburn area. I can close that and keep blending that. And you can exaggerate, stretch out that fade to the sideburn area as much as you'd like, as much as what your guest is comfortable with. Some gentlemen may like that fade to stay pretty compact so that beard actually does come up the sideburn area. Some may want you to go ahead and stretch that fade out through the sideburn. So that way that fade takes place even down lower. This, again, I'm going to trust my eye over the camera because it looks like it's really heavy, but in person it is not that heavy, not that much weight on it. But I might be able to lighten that up just a little bit more. So with that, I'm actually going to go back to my 1.5 attachment, the white one we used earlier, and actually just try to blend that out just a little bit more. Take a little more weight off without having to completely reset that whole blend that we did. And kind of just help tighten up that 2 that I could use, blend that down a little bit more into where that 1 is, but still connect and flow into that 3. Come back, just get a little more aggressive with that 1 open. There we go, it's looking pretty good there. Just do a little bit of notching with that edge of the clipper. So that'll help me just kind of get a little bit more blend out of that. A little bit of that weight off through there. So again, you can refine and blend out. I think that's looking pretty good. Even on camera, you can see a pretty nice transition happening through there. And that's going to give us our nice low fade all the way throughout. Again, that's going to just go all the way around the half of the head. And again, I know I'm looking at this just even over with my eye, just really being able to see that. I could certainly get out my blending shears if I wanted to debulk this a bit. I am going to trust my eye a little bit more than what I do see on the camera because I am trying to use that as a mirror just to double check it. But the camera is showing a little more weight than what actually. But we could still come in and just do even a little bit of some texturizing shears to help remove that weight a little bit more. I can even freehand these through that blending area. Just lighten that up. See if that kind of helps make a little bit of a difference, especially more for the camera. Don't want to overdo it, and because it's looking good on my end. And I hope that it's reflecting pretty good there on the camera. I think that helped out for sure. So there's certainly some areas that reflect more via camera than it does via the eye. But I'm pretty happy with that. We can now see a little bit of where we started. All right. Lots of texture, length, activation, movement that's going on here. Now, I was really happy with this razor cut. Kind of reminded me of Billy from The Boys on Amazon. This is the kind of haircut that Billy the Butcher has, if anyone's ever seen that show. That's what really kind of inspired that razor look. On the other side here, we've got a really nice modern male haircut here with that low fade. We'll go ahead and just bring him down just a little bit lower. So you can see that kind of side comparison. And that low fade has that really nice, up the side here, low fade has that really nice profile that follows that curve of the head. We can see that question mark shape all the way through it. And that razor cut, I love it. I really dig it. Like I said, definitely inspired a little bit more by that TV show. It's what influenced my choice for the cut. This is just that great low fade. Hopefully you walk away with something following this low fade video. And even from a distance, that beard really looks like it's doing pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. So hopefully this has helped you understand a little bit more about how you approach your low fades. Again, I really want to emphasize not the exact look that I did. You don't have to go in and use the exact same lengths. I want you to know what lengths I use. So if you wanted to practice them, you could. But you don't always have to go as short as this. You could use the same technique for even something a bit longer. You could start your lowest length at that number 1 attachment or even at a number 2. What this is really going to help do is just emphasize that curve of the head here. You can see we keep that question mark profile. But again, with the look that I've done, really helps give you a bit of that skin appearance. It's a really nice, sharp looking fade that I think a lot of men are going something from this. If you do have any questions, by all means, let me know what they are in the chat now. If not, hopefully we'll see you next time on another Fundamentals live session. We do have another one scheduled. Double check the schedule, but you can check it. What is that, 13th with Jason Russell. He's going to be doing a modern graduation, so you can check that video out. But again, if there's any questions, let me know. If not, I'll see you in the next Pivot Point live session. So again, thank you for your time today and keep learning forward.